When you think of the American Midwest, you probably picture endless stretches of open road, quiet country towns, and towering endless fields of corn. During the day, these fields are a beautiful symbol of agriculture and hard work. But at night, when the sun goes down and the wind starts to blow, those same fields transform into something else entirely. Corn stalks can grow up to 9 feet tall. When you're standing in the middle of a massive field at 2 a.m., surrounded by nothing but dry, rustling leaves and pitch-black darkness, the isolation is suffocating. You can't see more than a few feet in front of you. Sound is muffled. And if someone or something is in there with you, you won't know until it's right behind you. Today, I have 3 truly terrifying stories about encounters in cornfields that will make you think twice before taking a shortcut through the country roads. This first story comes from a guy named Mark, who was driving through Iowa a few years ago. I was in my early 20s at the time, driving from Chicago back to my college town in central Iowa. It was late October, and I had stayed in the city longer than I intended. By the time I hit the interstate, it was past 11 p.m. I was exhausted, just wanting to get home and sleep. About 2 hours into the drive, my GPS suddenly lit up with a detour. There had been a multi-car pileup a few miles ahead, and the interstate was completely shut down. The GPS rerouted me down a series of county roads to bypass the traffic. I didn't think much of it. I just turned off the highway and followed the blue line on my screen. The paved roads quickly turned into gravel, and eventually just narrow, rutted dirt roads. The trees thinned out, replaced by massive, sprawling cornfields that had already been harvested, leaving behind only the tall, dead stalks. There were no streetlights. The only illumination was my high beams cutting through the thick, dusty air. About 10 miles down this nowhere road, my car hit a massive, hidden pothole. I heard a loud pop, followed by the violent shaking of the steering wheel. I pulled over to the shoulder, my heart sinking. I had blown a front tire, and to make matters worse, my spare was in the shop. I pulled out my phone. No service. Of course, I stepped out of the car. The silence out there was deafening, broken only by the ticking of my cooling engine and the dry, papery rustling of the corn stalks swaying in the night breeze. The air was freezing. I looked up and down the dirt road. Nothing. But I remembered passing a farmhouse about a mile back. I figured if I walked, I could get there, use their landline, and call a tow truck. But walking along the shoulder of the pitch-black dirt road sounded miserable. Looking at my GPS, which was still trying to load a map, I realized the farmhouse was just on the other side of the massive cornfield I was parked next to. It looked like it would be a straight shot, maybe half a mile through the stalks. I grabbed my heavy Maglite flashlight, locked my car, and stepped into the corn. Instantly, the temperature seemed to drop. The stalks were incredibly thick, and the dry leaves were sharp, scratching at my jeans and jacket as I pushed through. The beam of my flashlight barely penetrated the darkness. It just illuminated a swirling cloud of dust and dead leaves. The noise of my footsteps was loud, but it was completely swallowed by the vastness of the field. I had been walking for maybe 15 minutes, constantly checking my compass app to make sure I was heading north toward the house. When I heard it, it was the distinct sound of a dry stalk breaking. It came from my left, maybe 20 feet away. I stopped. The rustling of the wind seemed to fade. I held my breath and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was just a coyote or a deer. I started walking again, a little faster this time. Crack, rustle, snap. It wasn't an animal. It was the heavy, deliberate sound of someone walking parallel to me, just out of the reach of my flashlight. My blood ran cold. I stopped again. The footsteps stopped a second later. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded weak, instantly absorbed by the corn. "Is someone there?" "I'm just trying to get to the house." No answer. Just the wind. I clicked my flashlight off. Total suffocating darkness enveloped me. I waited, my eyes straining to adjust. About 10 seconds later, I saw it. About 30 feet to my left, deep inside the rows, a pale oval shape was hovering at my eye level. It was a face. It was just standing there, perfectly still, staring in my direction. I couldn't make out any features, just the sickly pale glow of skin in the moonlight filtering through the canopy of stalks. Panic completely took over. I clicked my light back on, sweeping the beam to the left. Nothing was there. The stalks were undisturbed. I didn't care anymore. I turned and just started running. I didn't care about the scratches, the dust, or the darkness. I just pushed through the corn as fast as my legs could carry me. Behind me, I heard the heavy, rapid crunching of footsteps. Whoever, or whatever it was, they were running too, and they were keeping pace with me. I could hear them breathing. A wet, ragged sound right over my shoulder. I burst out of the cornfield, tearing my jacket and scraping my face, and practically collapsed onto the gravel shoulder of the dirt road. I scrambled to my feet and looked back. The corn was just swaying in the wind. No one came out. I ran the rest of the way to the paved road, flagged down a passing pickup truck, and called the police from a gas station. When the cops checked the area the next day, they found my car, but they didn't find anyone in the corn. They did, however, find a trail of deep, bare footprints in the dirt, running parallel to where I had walked, stopping exactly where I had burst out of the field. Our next story is from a college student named Sarah who was doing some photography in rural Ohio. During my junior year, I was majoring in fine art photography. For my final portfolio, I decided to do a series on rural decay. I spent my weekends driving around the countryside, looking for abandoned barns, old silos, and forgotten farmhouses. One Saturday in late September, I found a location that was absolutely perfect. It was an old two-story Victorian farmhouse that had clearly been abandoned for decades. The paint was peeling, the windows were boarded up, and the porch was caving in. But the best part was the setting. The house sat on a small hill, completely surrounded by a massive, unharvested cornfield. The stalks were incredibly tall, easily 8 or 9 feet, creating a natural wall around the property. I parked my Honda Civic at the end of the long, overgrown driveway and hiked up to the house with my camera gear. I spent about 2 hours just shooting. The lighting was incredible. I got some amazing shots of the decaying wood against the golden hour sun. But as it always does in the Midwest, the sun dropped fast. Once it dipped below the horizon, the temperature plummeted, and the golden light turned into a bruised, dark purple twilight. The cornfield, which had looked beautiful in the sun, suddenly looked like a towering black wall of shadows. I packed up my gear, feeling a sudden, irrational urge to just get back to my car. The silence out there was heavy. No birds, no crickets, just the wind. As I walked back down the driveway, the last bit of daylight faded. I clicked on my phone's flashlight to guide my steps. The driveway was bordered by the corn on both sides, creating a narrow tunnel. About halfway down, I heard a sound that made me freeze. It was a humming. A low, melodic humming like a lullaby. It was coming from the corn to my right. I stopped, my grip tightening on my camera bag. "Is someone there?" I asked, trying to sound authoritative. The humming stopped. Then it started again, but this time it was coming from the left side of the driveway. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I began to walk faster, my eyes darting between the 2 walls of black stalks. The humming grew louder. It wasn't just one voice anymore. It sounded like 3 or 4 people humming the exact same tune, perfectly in sync, moving through the rows just out of sight. I broke into a jog. The humming sped up to match my pace. I could hear the dry leaves brushing against each other as whatever was making the sound moved through the field, tracking me. I reached my car, fumbled with my keys, and dropped them in the dirt. I let out a frustrated sob, dropping to my knees to feel around in the dark. The humming was right on the other side of the corn now. I could hear the wet, smacking sound of bare feet on the dry earth. I found the keys, unlocked the door, threw my bag in the passenger seat, and jumped in. I locked the doors and turned the key. The engine sputtered, then caught. I threw it into reverse and slammed on the gas, spinning the tires in the dirt before shooting backward down the driveway. As the headlights swept across the corn, I saw them. Standing just inside the stalks on both sides of the driveway were figures. They were tall, impossibly thin, and wearing tattered, dark clothing. Their faces were completely obscured by the shadows, but I could see their heads turning. Tracking my car as I reversed, I shifted into drive and floored it, not caring as the bottom of my car scraped against the ruts in the road. I didn't stop driving until I hit the main highway and saw the lights of a town. I never went back to that house. And to this day, whenever I hear a song playing on the radio that has a similar melody to that humming, I get intense panic attacks. Our final story comes from a guy named David, who grew up working on his family's large-scale farm in Nebraska. If you've never worked on a commercial farm, you probably don't realize how much work goes into it, especially during the growing season. My family grew corn and soybeans on about 2,000 acres. During the summer, the corn would grow so thick and tall that if you stood in the middle of a field, you couldn't see the sky. One night in mid-July, my dad realized that one of the center pivot irrigation systems had stopped working in the far north sector of the property. If that section didn't get watered by morning, we'd lose a significant portion of the crop. Since I was the youngest, it was my job to go out there and figure out what was wrong. It was about 1:30 a.m. The moon was hidden behind a thick layer of clouds, making it pitch black. I took the farm ATV, a four-wheeler with a small bed in the back for tools. I drove out to the north sector. The corn was at least 9 feet tall, completely blocking out the wind and creating an eerie, dead silence. I found the problem pretty quickly. A large branch from a tree line about a quarter mile away had blown over and tangled itself in the sprinkler spans. I killed the engine of the ATV to listen for any other mechanical issues. That's when the silence of the field was broken. It sounded like someone walking heavily through the dry stalks. I figured it was one of the farmhands, maybe my dad coming out to check on me. "Hey, Dad?" I called out, no answer. Just the sound of footsteps moving slowly through the corn. But they weren't coming from the direction of the farmhouse. They were coming from deep inside the field to my right. I clicked on the ATV's headlights. The bright halogen beams cut through the darkness, illuminating the thick green and yellow walls of corn. I watched the stalks about 50 yards away. They were parting. Something was walking through the rows, moving parallel to me. I felt a primal spike of adrenaline. We were miles from the nearest neighbor, and there was absolutely no reason for anyone to be walking through our crops at 2 a.m. "Hello?" I yelled, my voice cracking slightly. "Who's out there?" The stalk stopped moving. I sat on the ATV, my hand resting on the key, ready to start the engine. I stared at the spot where the corn had parted. For a long minute, nothing happened. I started to convince myself it was just a large animal, maybe a stray cow from a neighboring pasture. I reached forward and turned the key. The ATV roared to life. The second the engine started, the rustling started again. But this time it wasn't slow. It was fast, and it was coming directly toward me. I threw the ATV into gear and hit the gas. The machine lurched forward, bouncing over the irrigation ruts. I looked in my side mirror. The corn stalks were whipping wildly. Something was sprinting through the field, keeping pace with the ATV, which was doing about 25 miles an hour. I pushed the throttle all the way down. The engine whined and we bumped up to 35 mph. The rustling in the mirror sped up too. It was right on the edge of the tree line now, just a few yards away from the ATV. Then, I saw it in the mirror. A hand, pale and covered in dark, caked-on mud, reached out from the corn and grabbed the top of the stalks, pulling itself up. A face peered over the top of the 9-foot corn. It was a man, but his eyes were wide, unblinking, and his mouth was stretched into a massive, unnatural grin. He was looking right at me. I screamed, gripping the handlebars so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't look back again. I just rode that ATV like I was fleeing for my life, bouncing over every ditch and rut, praying I wouldn't flip. I burst out of the cornfield and onto the main dirt road, tearing back to the farmhouse. I didn't stop until I was inside the kitchen, locking the deadbolt behind me. My dad came downstairs asking what the hell was going on. I told him, shaking so hard I could barely speak. He grabbed his shotgun and his hunting dog, and we drove back out to the north sector in his truck. When we got there, the irrigation was fixed, but what we found in the corn made my stomach drop. About 50 yards from where I had been parked, the stalks were trampled down in a wide circle. In the center of the circle was a makeshift bed made of corn husks, and scattered around it were dozens of Polaroid photographs. They were all pictures of me. Pictures of me working the fields, pictures of me eating lunch on the porch, and pictures of me sleeping in my bedroom, taken from outside my window. We called the county sheriff, but they never found the guy. But I know he's still out there, because every now and then, when the wind blows just right. I can still hear that heavy, rapid crunching of footsteps in the corn.